I'm Aruna Papp. Welcome back to TAG TV. We are here with another very interesting segment for you. Many times we become involved with incidences that are related to violence, different kinds of violence, not just particularly domestic violence, but other forms of violence as well. And we are so traumatized that we don't know where to go, who to talk to, other than the police, who will help us, and find out what are our rights, what are places to go that are comfortable, and we have no information about it. So today we are going to introduce you to two people who work with an agency called Victim Assistance Program. My first guest is Jade Harper, and she will talk to you about what the agency does. And then I have with me Sonia, who will also tell you about the challenges that this agency is facing and what they need to learn from the community so that they can provide the services to the community that are helpful to people who are victims of violence. So welcome to our program, Jade. Tell me about Victim Assistance Program.
Sure, thank you for having us. We represent the Ontario Network of Victim Service Providers, and what that means is that there are 47 victim service agencies across Ontario working in partnership with their local municipal police service as well as Ontario Provincial Police Service to ensure that any and all victims of crime, any and all victims of tragedy are treated with compassion, respect, and receiving that information that you alluded to at the top of the show. So our premise is, as a network of a collaborating agency, is to ensure that amongst all of those 47 victim services agencies, we're doing the best that we possibly can to support our communities.
So when you say victims, what kind of victims are we talking about? Is it home invasion, for example? Is it domestic violence? Is it car accidents? What do you mean by victims?
So Aruna, it's anyone that has unfortunately had the circumstance of coming into contact with someone, for example, that has taken their power and control. So, for example, as you've alluded to, the home invasion, break and enter, human trafficking, sexual violence, domestic violence, child abuse, suicide, anything and everything that you can possibly imagine that really is an individual who's been exposed to trauma, really looking for those support mechanisms in place to help them regain that level of control that they would have lost in that circumstance.
So many in our community don't even know that if there is a home invasion, for example, how traumatizing that is. And that there is assistance for them.
Yes.
For example, if there is suicide or somebody has died in traffic accident.
Absolutely.
And the family is traumatized, they don't know that you are here to help them, you know.
That's why we're so very pleased to be here today. You know, knowledge is power, and ultimately, if people are unaware of what that knowledge is, how do you forewarn and forearm?
And when you are in a trauma, you become helpless and
Absolutely.
you can't think and you can't make decisions for yourself. And so what do I do now? My world is falling apart. So you are there to help them through that difficult time in life.
Yes, oftentimes I refer to us as being that guide on the side, really trying to do our best to help that individual navigate whatever those circumstances might be. And we do come at it with a trauma-informed client perspective to ensure that individuals do feel supported. But nonetheless, you can't feel supported if you don't know that they're there. And so we operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, And we work in partnership with local police services, or again, the provincial police service. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if the police officer doesn't recommend victim services, then it is our incumbent right as Ontario citizens to be able to say, I'd really like to see the victim services team.
And we need to let them know
Yes.
that you exist.
Absolutely.
You know? And the other thing is the victim does not just have to be a woman who is in trouble. It can be a man, it can be a senior, it can be a child, it can be any Ontario citizen who is victimized.
Correct.
Victimized when in a traffic accident or a home invasion or any kind of violence.
Yes.
Or trauma or accidents. Right?
Yes.
Sonia, tell me about some of the cases that you have been working with, or your department has been working with, and some of the challenges that they've had to deal with.
I think we deal with a variety of cases, and some of the ones, though, the ones that we see most often are usually about relationship violence. So whether it be domestic violence, sexual violence, elder abuse, child abuse, anything within that framework is really where we spend a lot of our time and resources. And there's a variety of challenges that go along with that. One of the challenges is, which you two actually just spoke about, is ensuring that people know that we exist and how to get in touch with us if for whatever reason the referral is not made to our service from our police partners. But also having the proper training, the proper knowledge and understanding and resources so that we are capable of assisting the person where they're at within their community, within their culture, within their developmental stage of life, and trying to somehow come to terms with the ability to ensure that we can provide these services to everybody, regardless of who they are and where they're coming from.
So let me ask you a scenario, explore a scenario with you. Suppose there's a senior couple
Yep.
who are living with their family.
Yes.
And I know that they're victims of domestic violence, or they're being abused.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you can do for them? How would we approach them? What would be the best way to help them?
Well, I think that one of the best things, if you knew of somebody, you can reach out to any one of our organizations and we will provide you with information and resources that we can have and find. And so that you can act as a support person for this person, or we can take a referral from you and we can communicate with them directly if that is safe to do so, and do the same and provide them with some safety planning. We do a lot of safety planning with people within their homes, their communities, emotional safety planning as well, and work with a lot of systems and resources to try to help to find out what's going to be in someone's best interest at that time, that's going to work for them to help them stay safe and move forward in a healthy way.
And would it be correct for me to assume that you have a lot of information about other agencies as well?
Absolutely.
So you would be a resource center.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you don't provide the food, but you would know who would.
That's
you
right.
don't provide the housing, but you know somebody who will. So you
Yeah.
can connect people with those who are in need. Is that one of the things that...
Absolutely. So one of the part of our mandate for all of the victim service organizations is we're a referral-based organization. So I think, you know, the common term that's used now is system navigator. And what that means is we take, you know, the information in, and it's our job to help somebody get connected wherever it is that they need to be. And then once they're connected, you know, they typically don't require a whole lot of services from us anymore. So we're that bridge that goes from, you know, one place to the next.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that immigrant communities in particular, I'm sure everybody worries about it, is confidentiality, right? But in our community, and especially in my work, they say gossip kills, because gossip, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me a little bit about confidentiality, and if I was to reach you and say, so-and-so needs help, or I need help, will everybody in the community know that I'm going to you?
Nobody would know that you would come to us. So all the organizations have very strict confidentiality rules. So even though we take referrals from police or emergency services or other social services, we don't give back the information that we might gather from talking to somebody. So it's not a two-way street from that end. So every communication that we have with someone is confidential and private, except for in the case of a child abuse case that has to be reported to the Child Protective Services. But other than that, it's very much information that stays within the organization and is kept very confidential.
Jade, do we have to go through the police? Is the first contact the police and then they call you? How does the system work?
Yeah, so no, the police don't have to be the initial instigator of the request for service. However, it's important to note, and I'm glad you asked about the confidentiality, because we are available free of charge and confidentially. If somebody was looking for service and support, such as the case that you've just described around elder abuse, most of our victim service organizations operate on normal business hours, Monday through Friday. And that call could come in, that request for service could come in. Where it's important to refer to the police aspect is our immediate response on scene or on site at that particular crime location or that tragic trauma location. We need the police there just as much as the clients or the victims do to ensure safety. So if individuals are looking for us to attend their home, for example, the only way that we're able to do that is through the police. Mm-hmm. However, if an individual was looking for general information, and that information could be about the resources, what would be available in my community, or also I'm feeling as though I'm in crisis right now. Something has happened and I don't know how to process this information. We're also just really good listeners, and we would be in a position to be able to support them through that telephone liaison Monday through Friday, generally 8 to 5.
So the senior couple that I'm talking about, they can have a chat with you on the phone privately.
Yes.
And the police does not have to get involved in it.
No, and in fact, if, for example, they even wanted to come to our office, if it were better to have a face-to-face discussion, then we would arrange that meeting time with them as well at a mutually convenient time and a mutually convenient space.
Because it is very difficult for seniors, for women, or for many other individuals as well, to call the police. Yes. Because they are dealing with family members and the conflict, and they just want to find a resolution to the problem. So they can call you and you can talk to them on the phone or meet with them in the offices, and you would have different resources that can help them without police involvement.
Yes, and I think that it's interesting because generally they say that crime statistics are going down in Canada, but by our experience, individuals calling of their own volition, their own cause, is actually on the rise. So what we know is that there's a disconnect between people reporting crime to the police, but people still requesting and needing that support. So we would be doing everyone a disservice if we were only reliant upon the police. If there's a circumstance where we think that the police would be beneficial to that individual situation based on our needs assessment, really trying to understand, well, what are we trying to achieve together here, then we may very well make that recommendation that they should speak to the police. But by no means is it an absolute or is it a necessity. It would still be their choice.
It's best to sit down with you and talk and find out what are the options available to them.
Yes.
And then the client and you can decide if it is necessary to call the police or not.
Yes.
And it may not be necessary. They may be able to work with the housing people and move out, but they have somebody they can confide in and be supportive.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay.
And what's interesting, it's analogous to an insurance broker, for example, right? You go to an insurance broker to determine what's the best solution for my insurance needs at this particular time, and I'm saying that just because it's an easy example. But that broker is going to say, well, actually, Aruna, this is the best insurance policy for you, and here's where I would suggest that you go. We're in a similar situation to that. We don't take credit necessarily for where we recommend, but we're trying to alleviate the challenges or those burdens that you might feel. And in some cases, we'll make, if you agree to it, we would make those calls on your behalf.
That's
So-
excellent.
So that
That's
really,
excellent, because I wouldn't know what to say.
Exactly.
You know, as a client,
exactly.
the
And-
clients are in trauma, and they are
Yeah.
so confused, they don't know what kind of questions
Yeah.
they should ask.
And they could
Yeah.
be upset, they could be in shock, particularly when we're talking about relationship violence. And I'm sure you're very much aware of this. You still love those individuals that you're talking about. You just want the violence to change
Yeah.
or stop, or whatever the circumstance might be. So in some cases, the phone call that you make to one of our organizations might be the first time that you've actually said it out loud.
Yeah, yeah.
So if that's the case, A, that's a major step forward, but B, you might also just need a little bit of time to figure out, well, now what do I really want? This is the first time I've actually said it to somebody in a safe and confidential way. Now maybe what's my next step? And you might not be ready to make that call just yet, but if and when you are, we can make it with you, we could make it on your behalf, or you can make it independently of your own choosing.
Yeah, I had sent a client to your organization a few years ago because of home invasion, and you did an excellent safety assessment
Nice.
with them about the house and whatnot, and
Perfect.
and taught her how to look after herself and how to watch out for being followed and being harassed, and all, the whole training.
Yes.
And then ended up getting an alarm system for her house. So those are the kinds of valuable information that is missing in the community, that once a house is broken into, they can't sleep
That's
because they
right.
don't feel feel safe.
Yeah.
And it was very beneficial to the client to be able to talk and get the education about the safety planning of herself, her children, her parents, and everybody who's living in the house, and learn how to look after the safety plan of her building her house as well. So that was great.
Great,
Yeah.
that's good to hear. And
Yeah.
one of the hallmarks of victimization is to feel very alone,
Yes.
Yes.
right? Is to feel isolated. I'm the only person that this has happened to. And unfortunately, when we experience trauma and we go into that place that we really are all by ourselves, then we unfortunately create almost a situation where silence can be violence in some cases as well. So really knowing that there are resources out there in victim services organizations, and our position is always one of non-judgment.
Yeah.
It's always confidential, and we never assume. The reality is that individuals can come and go through our service as they please. There's no timeline, there's no quota, there's
No time to close the file now.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
So I think that knowing that what we know about victimization is that people are feeling alone. By being here with you today, what we're really trying to do is dispel that myth and say, as much as we possibly can assist, we want to assist. It's our mandate to assist.
Yeah.
But more importantly, you have individuals who have signed up for this work because they want to help in a big way, a small way, whatever it requires for that client, as you've said, to feel safe again. Ultimately, it's important for everybody to feel as comfortable as they possibly can on this planet.
Yeah.
And so how is it that we can help them do that? It's an easy step, an easy phone call.
Sonia, when we talk about people who are traumatized, we
Yes.
often forget that a large majority of them are teenagers.
That's right.
So, if a teenager is feeling some kind of discomfort,
Yeah.
well, what can they expect from you? Can you talk to that issue for a minute?
Teenagers are very welcome to reach out for services and assistance from victim service organizations. And some of the things that we can do is to help them sort through, again, what their options are at the safety planning. But what we do spend a lot of time in particular with teenagers is giving them information on coping. So it's because what we find quite frequently, we deal with actually quite a number of teenagers within our organization, and that they often need a lot of assistance understanding coping and healthy coping and ways to go about that, and that type of ongoing support so that they can figure out ways to navigate whatever it is that they're experiencing and where they want to go next. And as with most, with teenagers, as with seniors in particular and children, they are often very helpless because they're dependent on others for care. And so it changes the dynamic just slightly sometimes, and you have to be very open and patient in terms of helping them to understand how to move forward.
So would you say to the teenagers, it doesn't matter what kind of issue, what kind of situation is troubling you, call me?
That's right.
Yeah.
And what we find in particular with teenagers, especially as that age group, is that they'll come forward with, my friend, or they'll come forward with something along the lines of, well, I'm not sleeping. And then after the trust is established, then they actually start to address what the real issue is. So sometimes with teenagers, what's being presented on the surface really isn't actually the issue that you're going to ultimately be dealing with in a couple weeks' time. So, and that is totally okay. And we're very open to anything as they come forward and to help them.
And listen to them what
Yes,
their
absolutely.
To them whatever their issues are seem so huge.
They are.
Because they are so young and so inexperienced and don't know where to turn.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
And they don't have a base to determine, like they don't have the life history and base to determine, well, is this relationship safe? Is this healthy? Is this not? So, and sometimes...
A lot of them tell me, I don't want to go to the counselor in school because everybody will see me going and talking to the counselor.
That's right.
So you are only a phone call away, and it's very private.
That's right.
And nobody needs to know that they're talking to you.
That's right.
So, So before we wrap up, what is it that you would like from the community? What kind of help or information is beneficial to you to help in this program?
I think earlier I said that knowledge is power. And so ultimately at the end of the day, being in receipt of information is going to benefit our practices. It's going to inform the way that we conduct ourselves as professionals, but also how we morph and bend and flex our organizations to meet the demand, to meet the community. So I would be very much, as well as my colleagues, we would be very much pleased to have that, that dialogue to be ongoing and that feedback. What I don't know, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm really in that position, I think, on behalf of our colleagues to say, we want to know. The other aspect that I would say is we are a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week organization across 47 sites in Ontario. But we are very reliant upon volunteers to make that happen.
Excellent idea. Personally, are professionals from other parts of the world who have been trained here by you.
Yes.
So they may be volunteers, but they are quite professional people. So confidentiality is not a problem, and they understand the system. And yes, they are supportive to families, and this is something that the whole community will benefit from. Even if they're not victims, at least they have the information and they can pass it on to somebody else who might be in need.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time, and hopefully we will continue this dialogue with you and provide this information to the community, and I'm sure there will be those who will want to volunteer, and they can call our studios. TAG TV is here. You have the telephone numbers and you have the information how to get in touch with us. And if you are interested in volunteering with Victim Assistance Program, do call us. Until next time, this is Aruna Papp. Take care.
#1 multicultural channel. This is TAG TV.